Algebra 1, percents and solving proportions. So in this portion of the concept, we're going to use a proportion to solve a percent problem, which is a really common problem in math. So let's start with some vocabulary. So the first thing is percent. Now on your note sheet, I have written for you what a percent is. It's a comparison of a number to 100. Part of the word stem in the word percent right here actually means 100. So when you say percent, you're actually comparing to 100. So 7%, now if we write that in math, it's 7 compared to 100 or 7/100ths. So you can write it either way, as a decimal or a fraction. But in our mind, we know what percent means. We know that 7% is not a very high percent because it's only 7 out of a comparison group of 100. Now we're going to use the idea of proportion. So if you want to get down that definition again, it's an equation where one ratio or rate is set equal to another. And then we're going to use proportions to solve percent problems. The proportion, I guess, formula you can think of that we're going to use is we'll take our percent number over 100 and then set that equal to the part compared to the whole in our problem. And once we get going in the problems, you'll understand. So let's just do that. Let's solve some percent problems. Now we're going to solve them by setting up a proportion and then using that method of cross multiplying. So number one, we're going to find 1% of 800. Sometimes percent problems can also just be solved with common sense mental math. But let's just go ahead and set this up. So if you think about here, our percent proportion equation, we'll take our percent, which is 1, and that is always compared to 100. And then the whole is of 800. So often in these problems you can tell just by the language. So 1% of the whole amount, so usually that amount is after the word of. And then sometimes if you have the word is, that indicates the part. So we're looking for the part there. That's 1% of 800. And then we can just solve using our cross multiplying. So you can see that 1% of 800 is 8. Now you might have just figured that out mentally, because one part of 100, but then if you have 800 parts, a single portion of that would just be 8. But you can always set up a percent proportion. So 10%, so 10 over 100 of 800. So what is that amount? So then we can just cross multiply. So we'll get 8,000 equals 100x. And then we'll divide. $80. And then finally, 100% of 800. Now let's not set up a proportion for that, because 100% of anything is just itself. So that's simply going to be 800. Let's look at a few more percent problems. What is 7% of 800? So we can use that method of setting up a percent proportion. So we'll take our percent compared to 100. And then what is, so we don't know this part, but of, we're using 800 again. So use cross multiplying. And then we'll just solve for x. So 56 is 7% of 800. And when you get your answer, always look and make sure that your number is reasonable. So it should be a smaller amount compared to 800. 7 is smaller compared to 100. And 56 is. All right, and number 5, what is 50% of 64? Now again, you may just know that 50% means half. Most of us know that. Half of 64, if you divide 64 in half, you get 32. You can also set up your percent proportion equation. So remember, it's the actual percent number compared to 100. And then we don't know what that, oops, I'm writing it in, what that amount is compared to 64. And then you can just use the cross multiplying. So 50 times 64 is 3,200. And that'll equal 100x. So again, if we divide, then we'll just get what we expected. 32. Hey, one interesting fact is if you look at the percent symbol, that symbol was actually created from 100. So the slash is like the 1, and then those two zeros are like the 2 0 in 100. So that can help you remember. Sometimes it's also written like this, that it's a comparison out of 100. So what is 10, or sorry, what percent is 10 of 500? So in this case, we don't know the percent, so we're going to put an X in for that. And then is 10, so that's the part of 500, so that's our whole. Then we'll just cross multiply. So 500x equals 1,000. Divide both sides by 500. Uh, 500. So x equals 2. So 10 is 2% of 500. All right, number 7. 5 is 10% of what number? So again, 10, we do know our percentage now, so we can just set that up. And then 5 is 10% of, so of, we don't know the total now, so that's where we'll place our x. Of what number? Usually after of, that's our total amount. And then we'll just cross multiply. Divide both sides by 10. So 50. 5 is 10% of 50. Percentages occur all the time with sales, buying things. Flash drive costs $9. It's on sale for 20% off, and the sales tax is 8%. So what's the discount amount? So we want to know what 20% of $9 is. So one way to do that is our percent proportion. So 20 compared to 100 equals some amount over 9. Didn't mean to draw that line. Okay, so we'll just cross multiply. 180 equals 100x. And then I'm dividing by 100, so that will give me $1.80. So that's going to be my discount on the flash drive. So what is the sale price of the flash drive? Well, that'll be my $9 minus my $1.80. So I'm going to get that for $7.20. But I'm going to have to pay some sales tax, and it's 8% of that amount. So to figure that, I could set up my percent proportion. So 8 over 100. And then I know what the whole amount is. So the whole flash drive, but I don't know what that 8% portion, that part is. So then 8 times 720 is 5760. And 100x. And then I'm going to divide by 100. Now, we're working in money. So remember that we're going to round to cents unless we were told differently. So we're going to round it to 0.58, 58 cents. And then finally, the total cost of our flash drive is going to be our sale amount, $7.20, plus our tax. So $7.78. Now go do the teacher talk with your teacher, complete the Math Excel practice, and then finally you can take the quiz over the concept.